Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. So today we are going to talk about one of my favorite film subjects, animation, as well as one of my favorite directors, Wes Anderson! Ah yes, ever since I was a wannabe hipster, wearing lots of Hot Topic clothes and thinking that Wes Anderson he just got me, man. Oh, high school. Isle of Dogs. Get it? Isle of Dogs? Sounds like I love dogs. Which is kind of ironic when you think about it, because Wes Anderson does have a tendency to kill off his dog characters in his movies. Awkward. And before we get into the review, this episode is brought to you by Stardust. Stardust is a free app that you can download onto your phone, link is in the description down below, and it's the easiest way to post reactions to movies and TV shows and trailers on social media. Whenever I go see a new movie, I always post my immediate reaction on this app, so that's the best way to see my first thoughts on the film before I even review it. And it's not just new stuff, because there are literally thousands of things that you can react to on this app. And if you download the app, you can post your own reactions, watch other reactors, and if you tag me in one of your reactions, you might get a chance to appear in my next video. Stay tuned until the end of this episode to see if your reaction made it into the review. Now let's dig into Isle of Dogs. The film takes place in Japan, set in the near future, where the mayor Kobayashi has banned all dogs to a trash island. He claims that it's to protect the people from disease-ridden canines, but in reality, it's a complex plan to get rid of the dogs altogether as revenge for overthrowing the Kobayashi clan many centuries ago. After months of being on the island, a small pack of dogs come across a young 12-year-old boy named Atari, who stole and flew a small plane to the island to find his dog, Spots. Since this is the only person who's come to find their dog, the pack decides to help him out and do whatever it takes to reunite Atari with his missing friend. Now, of course a lot of us know by now that this is not the first animation film that Wes Anderson has directed, the other one being The Fantastic Mr. Fox, which was adapted from the book by Roald Dahl. Now, of course that film was really good, but what I find interesting about Isle of Dogs is that this time Wes Anderson is taking on a story that's also told from the point of view of the animals, but it's a completely original story, one that he wrote himself. And of course the style completely screams Wes Anderson. You got tons of symmetrical shots, overhead shots, vibrant color schemes, and the tone is especially quirky and whimsical. But also this time around, a lot of the score for the film is done with traditional Japanese drums, which is actually a huge far cry away from all the old music that Anderson likes to use in his movies. There is just such strong atmosphere in this movie. In fact, I think almost more so than most of his other films, and believe me, that is saying a lot. The movie itself really didn't have to take place in Japan when you think about it. I mean, story-wise, it could have taken place just about anywhere, but since it does take place in Japan, they use so much of the Japanese culture to paint the visuals and create this world, and it's just so pleasing to look at. And despite all the political themes in the movie, it's also a love letter to Japanese culture. And what's really fun about this movie is that you don't always know where it's gonna go. As per most of Wes Anderson's films, these characters have to go on a journey. They have to go from place to place, they run into interesting obstacles, they're aware that there's danger, and they frequently keep running into enemies who are trying to tear them apart. And one thing that I've always really appreciated about Wes Anderson films in particular is that he has such a talent for creating such simple ideas and concepts that when you really think about them are really silly, but he also works them in a way so that we, the audience, really care about them. Plus, no surprise, the animation in this film is stunning as hell. The fur on the dogs is frequently moving between frames, which is just one of the many added touches to the beautiful animation style. I mean, the handmade texture and the charm of the stop motion is just so realistic, and I also really like how all the humans were designed in this movie too. In a world where so much animation is computer generated, I love seeing movies like this where everything you see on screen was made by hand, and it just makes you appreciate the hard work that goes into stop motion even more. One of the most interesting parts of this movie, for me at least, is how they communicated language. The audience is told in the beginning that everyone is going to be speaking in their native languages, so the Japanese always speak Japanese, and the one white girl speaks English most of the time. And the dog's language is translated with English voiceover. Rarely do we ever see any subtitles in this movie, and if we do, it's usually for text rather than people speaking. Now, some people might disagree with me, but I thought that the execution for this, for for the most part, was actually done really well. Because when someone spoke the Japanese language, there was sometimes an interpreter just off to the side, or if we see a scene with people only speaking Japanese, usually those scenes are pretty short and they use something like text or visuals to convey what they're talking about. So it gets the point across pretty well. Then you have the scenes with Atari and the dogs, and yes, if you don't speak Japanese, then you're not going to understand Atari the few times that he talks, but the thing is, the dogs really can't understand him either, so we're seeing it through the eyes of the dogs. And again, even if you can't understand Atari, I still think that the film found some really clever ways to convey what he was trying to communicate. Just through visuals or gestures, and you can also kind of hear the intent too. So yeah, if you found it frustrating that you were not able to always understand what people were saying, then I guess I understand, but for me, it never got to a point where I did not know what was going on and I wasn't able to follow the story, so I thought it was done great. Plus, I think that the movie just did a great job of telling the story through visuals alone. And the cast that they got to voice the characters are also fantastic. They of course got a bunch of Wes Anderson regulars like Ed Norton, Bill Murray, and Jeff Goldblum as the English-speaking dogs, along with Bryan Cranston and Scarlett Johansson, but they also got a wide variety of native Japanese speakers to do the Japanese roles, including Yoko Ono playing a character called Yoko Ono. And no, I have no idea why in the world they wanted a character named Yoko Ono played by Yoko Ono, except to maybe say, hey, we got Yoko Ono! Eh? And also no, she does not break apart anyone or anything in this movie, so don't worry, she's not playing it ironically. But there you go! And the characters in this movie are just so lovable, and their motivations are so clear and thought out. There's also a lot of really humorous moments, from the dialogue to physical humor to some really cute running gags. I mean, it's not knee-slappingly funny, but it's just funny enough that the film still comes off as really light and fun despite the really dark themes. But even though it's light and fun like all of Anderson's films, it still has a lot of layers to it too. For one, I like that the film is able to show the grittiness of Trash Island, but at the same time is still able to bring some nice, clever humor to it. Also, when you think about it, it's a story about dogs that were abandoned by society because their leader convinced them to do so. It's got some heavy weight about what propaganda can do to people and nations, especially when it comes to singling out one type of person, or species in this case. But then, the movie's also a really beautiful tribute to the relationship between dogs and humans. There's one dog in particular in this movie who goes through a really emotionally charged change in this movie, and it's actually kind of touching. Also, I'm just saying, for a movie that gives so much love to dogs, it's really nice that for once they don't paint cats as the enemy. There are some cats in this movie, but they're not the bad guys, and they're not, like, framed in a really demeaning way.
Yeah, I mean, you're a brat, but you're not evil, right? You're just cuddly, huh? Yeah. Mwah.
I mean, come on, they may be man's best friend, but they're still adorable and, you know, just stop hating on cats! This movie has such a mature and insightful vision to it in a way that adults are able to grasp the stakes of the story, but also kids are still able to follow along with it too. And I would know because there were a lot of kids in the audience when I saw this, and they really enjoyed it. Isle of Dogs, in all seriousness, is probably becoming my new favorite Wes Anderson film. I have always loved Royal Tenenbaums, but it's so hard to compare the two now. The characters are compelling, the story is refreshing, and it has so many different ways of looking at it. This movie is a mellow yet exciting adventure story with so much humor and heart, and every shot is just so gorgeous too, especially with all the imagination put into it. And even though it has a very unique feel to it, it still feels like a Wes Anderson movie. Plus, it's really nice to see a movie that has talking dogs that does not involve cringy wisecracking or lame-ass pandering storylines. I was smiling the entire time I watched this movie. I loved it so much, and I hope that this is not the last animation film that Wes Anderson does. Please support this movie, go see it soon, especially if you're a dog lover. I know you're gonna love it. And even if you're not a dog lover, I still think it's good enough that you'll like it. I think so. So those are my thoughts on the new Wes Anderson film, Isle of Dogs, and now here's this week's Stardust winner and their thoughts on the film.
So, Isle of Dogs, I'm so glad Wes Anderson's making another great stop-motion animated movie. I don't like it as much as Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I do want to check this out again, because I feel like this could benefit from a second viewing. And as a whole, I think it's still a really well done, beautifully animated movie. I do think the first act is the highlight of the film, and the rest of the film doesn't go as good as that, but still really fun. It's worth checking out for sure.
So now I want to know, what did you think of this movie? Also let me know, what's your favorite Wes Anderson film, and are there any other movies or shows or trailers coming out soon that you want me to do a review of? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below, be sure to like and share, and if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I make new videos every week! Bye, Adorkable Buddies, I'll see you soon!